All right, good morning, folks. Today is May 16th, 2025. My name is John Decker, the Director of Community Services at Alta California Regional Center. And this is Coffee with Community Services, Alta California Regional Center's weekly service provider meeting. Thank you for joining us. We've got 68 folks on right now. We will do introductions of staff and our agenda for today. So, from our Community Services Department, I see we have on Kylie and Michael and Alejandra and our manager Michelle and Boyd. Good morning. And I see also from Community Services Janice and Tom and our lead Jason and Rhonda and Brandy as well. Let's see. Also, I see Christine and Jessica and Odelia from Community Services and Beverly and Dan and Mason and Jolana and Chris as well. Good morning to Rihanna. I see that she's on. And then good morning to Dana from Client Services as well. For our agenda today, excuse me, we are going to have our Deaf Culture 101 and Sign of the Week with Michael. We have a spotlight with Expressible. We are going to be giving some rate reform updates. Within that will be service provider directory updates and service acknowledgement form updates. We are going to give an update on the release of the May revision of the California budget. We are going to remind folks that we are not having a meeting next week. We have an update on HCBS numbers as well from our HCBS team. So I will start off by spotlighting Michael Mercado.
All right, good morning. Okay, our signs of the week. They're fairly easy. So we have thank you and you're welcome. So first, starting on your chin with an open hand will be thank you. And so yeah, it's not going to be on your mouth, but it's going to be on the bottom of your chin. So thank you. And then welcome. So again, that flat hand, it's going to come towards you. Okay, so thank you from the chin, and then you're welcome. Great. That's something we can all practice. I'll send a link as well. Okay, for Deaf Culture 101, we're going to talk about poetry this week. A lot of hearing people love poetry. It has beautiful words, sounds, and rhythms. Can deaf people experience poetry? Do you think that deaf people are missing out? What if you were to learn that deaf poetry is a thing and is just as rich and powerful, and it's a unique visual form? I'm going to show a brief video of poetry. So I'm going to explain a few things about what poetry and deaf culture looks like. I will tell you there's no sound. So it's just going to be something that you observe, and it's called dandelion. So that's a beautiful example, a very famous deaf poet. So it's very expressive, it's performative, and it's communicating through hand shapes, body language, and using rhythm still through facial expressions instead of the actual auditory rhymes. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between a hearing perspective of poetry and deaf poetry. So can poetry have rhythm if it's not based on sound? Deaf poetry is typically performed live on stage or in video format using American Sign Language. So that is using visual rhythms and movements. So like we just showed that clip of the dandelion where it grows and then it closes and you get that pappus, that white from the dandelion, and it's showing that repetition of the seeds floating away. So that repetition is a version of rhythm. So how can you show emotion when you don't rely on voice tone? So deaf poetry uses the facial expressions and body movements to express emotion and meaning. So when the man first opened, he was talking about the dandelions and decided to pull them and make it a flat lawn. And then she shows the dandelions starting to come up, and it's like the dandelions hesitant and careful until finally it can sprout and become alive. And it starts to blow in the breeze until the man comes and the dandelion decides that it's going to continue to grow. And you see that in his face. A third point is, does poetry follow a different type of grammar if it's not English? So deaf poetry does follow ASL grammar and structure. It's based on visuals and it's very space oriented. So like when I'm standing straight, I am the dandelion. If I turn and it's like I'm looking down, that means that I'm a different character. So you can kind of go back and forth through body shifting or role shifting to show the man pulling the flower or if you are the flower yourself. Our fourth point is, can poetry be more than just words and sounds and focus on what's seen? So deaf poetry is a great example of visual expressions. It's less about the actual words and more about the hand shapes, the body movements, the facial expressions, and that spatial awareness. So here in poetry, we'll typically rely on the sounds and how those words sound. And ASL or deaf poetry, it focuses more on the expression and the visual. It focuses on how it looks and moves. It's not just a translation, it's its own type of art. There's no sound, but there's so much emotion, timing, and meaning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think all of us probably surprised at how well we could follow along because of the expressiveness of the poet. Thank you. All right. Expressible. I'm going to throw it over to you all now.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Andrea. I'm our early intervention manager at Expressible. We are a virtual speech therapy company. I'm going to share my screen now with a handout, tell you a little bit more about us. Some highlights, we have really flexible scheduling, no wait list right now. Our therapists work evenings and some weekends, so really flexible scheduling, a lot of availability. We are currently taking referrals for both speech and for feeding services. We use a parent coaching model via Zoom. We have highly qualified staff. Our SLPs on average have 10 years of experience. We use that parent coaching model, and we also have a lot of additional resources for our families. So we have a client portal that supports our families with weekly practice activities, video lessons on different strategies that they've learned in therapy, tracking their goals, and they can also text their therapist at any time to reach them. We have over 2,500 five-star reviews, a 4.9 out of 5 on average reviews from our families. And we also partner with a company called Boostlingo for interpretive support for nearly 300 different languages. We'll put our email address in the chat, but you can reach us at ecireferrals@expressible.io for referrals. Any questions at all?
What's the referral process from ACRC? What's the referral process if we have somebody in SOS that we think might be a good candidate?
Michelle, can you jump in on the referral process?
Yeah, definitely. If you reach out to our ECI referrals email address, that goes right to me. And I can answer any, client specific questions, but typically if you send over like the purchase of service and the referral form, we're able to get them scheduled pretty timely. And then I would just communicate with the service coordinator, the date and time they're scheduled along with who the SLP will be.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that presentation. And I believe you put the information in the chat perfect for folks. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them directly. And Jordan has joined us. So Jordan, I believe you have a staff introduction for today. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. So yes, we're very happy that Monet Levere has joined our team here in the Community Services Department within Specialized Services. So Monet will be partnering with our resource developers that work on our Community Resource Development Plan and our Community Placement Plan. And Monet, if there's anything else that you would like to tell the group about your background, please feel free to unmute and say hello and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm just super excited to be in this new role and looking forward to learning new things and meeting with those that I need to meet with and just getting to know this side of the company.
Yeah. So I also forgot to mention that Monet's been a service coordinator here at the Regional Center for the past 3 years working with adults. So we're excited to bring her into our world of community services. It's a whole different language in community services, right? With all the service codes and subcodes. So thank you, Monet.
Yes, welcome. We've already been able to have a number of meetings and things move very fast in our community services department these days. Michelle Duchesne is one of the reasons why things move so fast. So Michelle, why don't we kind of talk about where we're at with rate reform a little bit and give people updates on some things. So I'm going to kind of share my screen real quickly for some overview stuff. And then I'm going to throw it to you, Michelle, for some specifics on our numbers as it relates to both the service acknowledgement forms and also overall participation in the service provider directory. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly, folks, and navigate to the Department of Developmental Services website. And I'm actually going to share before I start talking. All right, there we go. Are we seeing my shared screen? Yep, all right, thank you very much. So I am going to navigate to rate reform, and I want to touch on a couple things. One is the rate reform directives and updates are here, and the department has been keeping these updated. There's a couple things that are in here that I want to touch on, and first is going to be rate reform, and then we're going to get into service acknowledgement. Oh, they updated the numbers as of 4/22. Oh, that was a few weeks ago. So first, as it relates to service code misalignments, I want to update folks on a discussion that we had last week. There was some questions related to service code 055 service providers. Sorry, I'm going to start off the top of this screen here. There was a question about service code 055 providers or service code 063 providers. And if they have submitted exemption requests, whether or not they were considered misaligned or not. And they are not considered misaligned. Misaligned service providers, I had an opportunity to discuss this with the department in the interim between these two meetings. Very clearly are those providers that during the course of the rate study, and the rate study has been going on now for a couple years as far as giving the increase in wages or rates. If during the course of doing that, we miscategorized you in some way. So for example, we categorized you as a medical day program, but you're just a regular day program. And or you thought you were going to be a medical day program, but then you decided that you are not going to be, and then you're just going to be a regular day program. In that case, you are misaligned in the rate study. That means that since the January transitional rates came into effect, you've been receiving a higher rate than the service you have been providing. Therefore, you are misaligned, and we have to align you to the appropriate service code. So therefore, we would align you to the regular day services service code instead of the medical day services service code that you're currently under with your transitional rates. Once we transition you to that just regular day services rate, that's a lower rate. You don't get to keep the medical day services rate until the end of the hold harmless in June because it was applied inappropriately. You were misaligned. So I just want to clarify that. We also know that there are a number of service providers that are what we would consider to be unaligned. So the unaligned vendors would be like those service providers that have requested an exemption request. We don't have clear guidance from the department about those providers. We've already identified those ones that were misidentified during the course of the rate study. We've already sent out our acknowledgement forms to them with their appropriate new service codes. And so we're not very concerned about this, but I wanted to clean up some of the discussion last week because we weren't as clear about those people that had submitted the exemption requests. But the department was very clear that those that have submitted an exemption requests, whether it's been granted or not granted, it's just on a pause. You're just waiting right now. So you're not subject to these requirements that are put in here to put you under a certain service code. Before I get back into the rate study stuff, I wanted to see if anyone had questions about that because I did say I'd get this answer back by this week. Nope. All right.
No,
I'm going to go. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Lindsay, please.
For services that were misaligned throughout the rate study, is there any word on whether they're going to need to like return any of the money that they had at a higher rate or potentially get additional money if they were at a lower rate in their misalignment?
Yeah, the way it reads is that you become eligible for the realigned rate effective the next month. And
Okay,
so
so
I
just
don't believe that it builds in the retroactive payment. Uh, but that being said, like I'll right now it's these are important to us, but we have these other really high priorities about just getting everyone in the service provider directory right now, so that folks can bill. So yeah, let me ask real quickly, Michelle, we are still receiving the exemption request responses from the department, right now?
Correct. We have not received any formal responses. I know some providers have from other regional centers, but we haven't received any from the department as of yet.
So all of those providers are in essence kind of on hold at this time as it relates to us trying to put them into another category. All right, Lindsay, I don't know if I fully answered all your questions.
I mean, it sounds like we just don't know, but you're thinking probably you just align to the level you're supposed to be and we keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Andrea?
I have another question you may not know the answer to, so I'll preface with that. Say we are aligned as our 1 to 2 is the behavioral day, and I'm not sure if I do want to keep it or not, but also then we have to either hire or contract with the BCBA, and if we're not able to do that by the end of the year, could we adjust our, like, will we be in trouble if we're not able to like align with the new requirements, I guess is what it is, if we're attempting to do so?
I don't know that this would indicate that you would be in trouble in any way. It's just, I think our hope would be that as soon as you make a determination that you're not going to be able to implement like this might occur in other areas as well. Like, I don't know how the sleep time requirements in like lower level residential care facilities is going to impact staffing and like revenue. I don't know if that's going to impact providers too, and they're going to decide what they want to do or what changes they want to make. It's just as soon as possible. Like as soon as you,
Okay. So
yeah,
if we're
as soon
like,
as you-
oh, this isn't working, we can go ahead and.
yeah, like I will say I think our regional center's goal would be for you to try as hard as you can because we know we need more specifically those types of services, if that makes sense. And so I feel like it's in our best interest to encourage you to try to get it done until the end of this year. Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Jay.
Michelle had mentioned that some of the other regional centers may have been getting some responses back. Do you guys have any idea of what those responses have been to other regional centers?
We've received one from a courtesy vendorization and they did grant that exception. And then we've been also told that the department is going to reach out directly to the providers via mail to provide a response. So I don't know if any other providers that we support have received that letter.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Carol, yes, please.
I have like we've requested the exemption, but I don't know exactly what that means. So if you're granted an exemption, what does that mean? Like for how long?
I will say that the letter that we reviewed for the courtesy vendorization states that they are granted the exception until further direction from the department. So we haven't been given any additional dates or timeframes or anything like that at this time.
I mean, my assumption would be is that that means that we continue to use that same service code, even though the department until the department determines how they're going to change it for and provide a way for those vendors that like if there is enough data to show how those services are being utilized, is there enough data then to create a new type of service, if that makes sense, within the rate study? I think that's probably some of the things that are going on right now with the data that's being provided with these exemption requests. And so, and I know you guys also have an involvement through like advocacy to like get something like that to happen. So I think we just all have to be mindful of, well, we'll get there. This is all predicated on the hold harmless going away in June and giving us timeframes to do this stuff. And some of that discussion is changing a little bit this week. So we'll get to that, which also kind of impacts this discussion when we get to it. Let me continue talking about some of the numbers and some of the things that we're doing as a regional center real quick. May allow you guys to advise us on a few things here since we have a 109 person focus group. Michelle, I'm going to share my screen with the service. This is the one that you haven't seen yet, Michelle, I don't believe, and it'll hurt a little bit, but that's okay. So this is our status as of the 22nd of April when it came to service acknowledgement form completion per regional center. As it relates to these numbers, they may not be an apples to apples comparison, and I will explain why. Not every regional center is sending out their letters the same way. So for example, Jay may have got 7 different step letters from me, but maybe only gotten 1 from North Bay Regional Center where they're vendored for 4 different things because we decided to split our letters up. With that being said, we have some specific numbers. I'm going to have this on the screen, but Michelle's just going to give you an update on service acknowledgement forms and where we're at as of today.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so an update on our acknowledgement forms. We actually yesterday at the end of the day, we were at a little shy of 50%. So it was 49.97% of our acknowledgement forms have been completed and signed. Of those letters right now, we have approximately 318 providers that we're waiting to have them fill out and sign. Those providers have multiple letters that we're waiting on, but about 318 providers still need to sign their acknowledgement forms. Some of you may have received, I actually received the Everbridge text and phone call during this Coffee with Community Services. So any of those 318 providers that have not filled out acknowledgements or still need to sign those, you will receive an Everbridge text, an email, and also a phone call and I was going to share my message, but it doesn't look like I can share. So keep an eye out for that. So what that message is basically saying is that you have, and it's sent only to the providers that we note that have not completed their acknowledgement. So if you do not get one, you should be good to go. But it's just letting you know that it's there. Please check your spam. Please check your junk mail. It's from Sign Now. And so it'll come through noted as Sign Now and not the regional center. So please keep an eye out for that. Reach out to your specialist if you have any questions. If you don't see it, please reach out to us immediately. We will find that. We will send that to you. That's it for acknowledgement forms. John, did you want me to go on provider directory? Yes. Okay. So for provider directory, we have, so not in the directory. So this is a no contact. So these providers have made no contact with DDS to get a link to be able to access the provider directory. That was originally at 264. We sent out several Everbridges to let those providers know. That is down to 59. So we've gotten that one down significantly. I did on those 59, I did just confirm with the department that we are able to give them the information they need so that they can send those providers those links to access the provider directory. So we will get that over to the department no later than Monday so they can send over those links.
Let's clarify real quickly, just so everyone understands exactly what we're doing. So basically, we're completing the first step for the remaining providers. We know that there's 59 providers that have not filled out the information that will allow them to receive that invitation from the department. So we're going to take that step for the providers. Thank you, Michelle, for getting the okay from DDS to do that. It is absolutely imperative that individuals get into the service provider directory. And so this is going to be big targeted outreach.
Thank you. Yeah. So we'll get that over to the department. The next list we have is the not started list. So these are providers that are on the QIP list on the DDS website. However, they have not completed all steps necessary to be able to be complete and qualify for the QIP or just to be in the provider directory as the directive requires them to be. So that was, it was originally 309. We've sent out some Everbridges. It is at 216 at this time. So we will be we're in review of those lists right now. We just got an updated from the department. So we will be sending out another Everbridge to those 216 providers, letting them know that they still have not completed what is required for the provider directory, and we might be knocking on your door. So we're getting to that point now where we're doing some outreach, some boots on the ground type of stuff moving forward in the next couple of weeks to support providers on that. And that is, let me just share really quick. Here's an example. Oh, sorry, John, you were sharing. I wasn't even paying attention. Here is a example of what providers. Do you see the message, John? Everyone see it?
Yep.
Okay, so this is an example of a text message we're sending out. This one is in reference to the acknowledgement forms that we just sent about an hour ago, maybe 25, 30 minutes. So these are the things that our providers are receiving as we get these lists and update. And that's my summary for our numbers.
Okay, so I want to summarize again. This has been a little bit of a challenge when it's come to explaining this because of how all of these efforts have been tied together within DDS. And so I want to just share my screen one more time, and I'm going to go to the directives here. So DDS's website, and I'm going to go to rate reform. And I'm going to go to the directives, and I just want to clarify the difference between non-compliance with the service acknowledgement forms and non-compliance with getting into the service provider directory. So there are two things that we are managing right now as a regional center. Well, there's a lot of things we're managing, but in the community services department, we have trying to get all of your service acknowledgement forms in, but also concurrently trying to ensure that all of our providers have gotten into the service provider directory at the same time. When it comes to our efforts to get the service acknowledgement forms, again, Michelle mentioned we only have 310 providers that have not gotten back to us, but there's about 1,000 forms that are out there we're waiting for a response from. The department is given the authority of regional centers. Well, they're basically clarified that the regional centers have authority to determine that if we don't have a service acknowledgement form, that we could do a potential termination of vendorization. We recognize that there's a few instances where we don't have forms that have even gone out yet because of questions that need to be answered by the Department of Developmental Services. And so I just want to share, this is up to the regional center to make that determination if we're going to go that route. And our regional center would certainly take into consideration all of the challenges that we have had in trying to ensure that we get all of the accurate service acknowledgement forms out to you, while the department has concurrently really struggled in getting us your accurate rate information to put on those letters. The other part of this is, as Michelle mentioned, that specific getting into the service directory. And this is why those 59 people that have not been contacted, or those individuals that are marked as started in the directory but haven't finished yet, it's so important to continue to get those numbers down, because in this sense, or in this instance, if that happens, they are going to look at, and they've clarified it to the chief financial officers, but cutting off the ability for service providers to do e-billing in the month of July. So in essence, you would, if you have not gotten into the directory, then it would cut off your e-billing. And so that is very important to us. We are working on a number of different strategies. We met with all the other regional centers yesterday to talk about best practices that folks have in getting responses to all of these lists from different vendors. So wanted to see if anyone had any questions, but that's where we're at. We have a lot of activities that are going to be going on over the next couple of weeks to get hopefully our numbers up to 100% on both sides. And I will check the chat, see if we have any questions over there. I have a question about a rate letter. Can ACRC explain the difference between the 1-1 rate and the post-transition rate? Yes, we can. So the 1-1 rate was your transition rate. If you are a 055 day program and you already know that you are planning on going on to just a regular day services, then the transition rate that you would have received on 1/1/2025 would have been the day services rate for the new service code. Under service code, what is it, 531 is the new day services one. So you would have received that new rate that's in the rate study as your transitional rate, but we may not have switched you over from 055 to 531 yet, because for a number of different reasons, like it may have just not happened yet. And so in that case, you receive that transitional rate, which is your old service code, but with the new rate study rate applied to it, until we switch you over with your service provider acknowledgement forms, and then you have your post-transition rate at that point, which will be your new rate methodology, possibly even too, like if your rate methodology is changing, like in transportation's case, that's the difference between the transitional rates and the post-transition for transportation. Is currently the transition rates is you billing for your vehicle service hours, but we figured out what the mileage is with the hold harmless, like the applicable calculation. Once you switch over, then you'll just be billing at the new mileage rate when you have post-transition. Any questions about that? Post-transition rates, transition rates? Just that the transition rates applies the rate study increases to your current rate service code and rate methodology. And that's how we figured out the hold harmlesses too. All right. If we can transition, if that's okay, to budget stuff, is that fine if folks are interested in going there next? I am going to share my screen with DDS's email. I'm sure that they love when I do stuff like that. And I will say we are going to be having the Lanterman Coalition talking about the rally on the 22nd as well. I have the flyer to share here shortly, so we're going to go over that too. So May revision. Let me share my screen with DDS's website here. Not everyone is familiar with the California budget process, but the governor will put out a proposed budget in January. There will be revision to the budgets that is done. In May, we have this release, and then there's hearings that are related to that release, and then the final budget comes over the summer. So this is part of the phase of the process when the policy and sometimes the savings areas are identified by the Department of Developmental Services. I'm going to share my screen in such a way, I hope, so that this is large enough for everyone to see. Does that help at all for the May revision summary? So this is a document that the Department of Developmental Services, as you saw, has on their website. It goes over the May revision summary, and it talks about how they're going to be spending money and how they're going to be saving money. And so in here, you can find information about how they're planning on implementing the new LOAS system, which is going to be a replacement for statewide case management service. We are going to have some additional things. So these are some budget change proposals related to different positions that we're going to be funded. So includes 1 year limited term resources equivalent to 9 positions to support increased workload related to compliance with the new HCBS requirements. Staffing for health and safety investigations and due process. Some of you are familiar that there is a new QR code on the back of every IPP that should certainly make it much easier for our large community to share issues and complaints with the Department of Developmental Services. And with that, there is certainly a thought that there's going to be more necessity to process those complaints that are coming in, investigations. Clinical and monitoring team support for specialized community homes, 4 permanent positions to support development and monitoring of specialized community homes and services. So more folks from DDS to provide support to Jordan and her team in the monitoring of those specialized homes. Let's see, 5 permanent positions and contracted consultant to support and explore options to obtain payment from public and private health insurers for services purchased by regional centers on behalf of eligible individuals. I don't know if Faye's on here, but I know Helen's on here. And I had quite a discussion this week about the necessity for us to really dig into this area at a regional center level. So interesting to see that at a statewide level, the department's going to be looking at that a little bit more closely. Public Records Act, it looks like they made some adjustments to cut down on some positions that they felt that they might need to be able to support that. And then government efficiency reduction, not sure what that is. Vacancy savings, position elimination. I'm sure folks from SEIU could probably tell you what that's all about. Getting into the things that are a little bit more understandable and impactful for you all as service providers, we have some reductions here that they are proposing to help balance the budget. Quality Incentive Program eligibility provider mandate, a reduction of 221 million general fund starting in 2026 ongoing. Some of these I'm more familiar with than others. If anyone's interested in chiming in on any specifics about that one, you're welcome to unmute yourself. I'll look down at the screen too, see if anyone raises their hands. But otherwise, the one that I think is, Andrew, yes, please. If you have something on that first one, that would be super helpful.
I have a little clarity of stuff, and I think I could share this because it was from a previous meeting, but that it is the quality incentive will also be tied to our already some of the regulations that are current.
Yes,
like
HCBS, of
HCBS,
compliance. Yes,
and
that's what it
audits.
is.
And if you can't meet those, then you do not qualify for the 10% because those are like bar level compliance stuff. That's what I had heard that was.
Yes, okay, you're right. I had forgot that one. Eric, anything else to add to that one?
EVV was mentioned as well as HCBS compliance. So that I'm not entirely sure where. I think HCBS compliance is more cut and dry. EVV, I'm not entirely sure because I don't want to get into the details of EVV, but not everything that you're able to bill for meets all the 6 criteria for EVV. So there's EVV as well. And I just would mention that's a big number. That's general fund. So then you have matching federal dollars. So you're talking about a $500 million savings for folks not getting the QIP. So that's just a big number. So they would need policies that would actually result in those savings, which may or may just little note on that note, that item.
So I'm assuming that's where you guys are going to play your role in providing some support to these folks in the government to determine how they should come up with some of these measures.
I think the regional centers are helping with that one.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think you're right. The only way to achieve these savings is to create stricter and stricter compliance measures, right?
Yeah, that's an assumption that is based on people not completing that. So it's an interesting number in general. So
Jay,
Well, I'm just concerned that if there's if like you said, it being more restrictive compliance, does that mean that when we have staff that fails to clock but notifies us immediately that they're there and we go in and make a correction? I'm wondering what the correction error allowance is going to be on that, because if they're not going to allow us to bill for a visit that has been incorrectly logged, that's absolutely terrifying, and that's what it looked like to me when I was looking at it.
well, if we can keep this group up to date on some of these discussions as you all become aware of them, I just think these are, there's been a lot of discussions about the quality incentives and not being used to punish service providers or some of these different things. And so I just appreciate you guys sharing what you know about this with our larger group. And this was the next one will certainly be one that I'm sure we'll discuss. The service provider rate reform hold harmless provision. Reduction of $75 million in general fund fiscal year 25-26 to end service provider rate reform hold harmless policy as of February 28th, 2026 instead of June 30th of 2026. So certainly open for comments as it relates to that. I will share a concern on the regional center operational behalf. Is there's a lot of work that needs to be done to determine appropriate rates for folks ahead of the end of the hold harmless. And so if that period of time gets shortened, then things like determining where all those exemptions are going to land, what we are going to do as far as final rates for transportation, possibly early start providers. If we're in the process of determining some of that stuff right now, it seems to not really align with us shortening our timeframes to figure this stuff out. However, it would certainly save money for the state. So I will move on to self-determination program updates. I also, because we have some case management folks on here and service providers that work with self-determination, I don't know what the guardrails are that are being proposed as it relates to self-determination and budgets or however this was determined. If anyone has any additional information related to that, I'm very open to hearing about it. We can certainly report back in more detail once we have more information, but it looks like a reduction of 22.5 million in general fund and 45.5 general fund ongoing, and this is for self-determination program updates. Eric, yes, please.
Just an important note on that. It was misunderstood in one of my calls earlier. The self-determination is still seeing an overall increase. So
Yeah.
the determination is still getting, it's just they decreased how much it was increased by 22 million for proposed savings around those sort of guardrail measures. So it's not that the overall, so I had heard an advocate say, they're cutting up like SDP from what it was. And it's still getting an increase, it's just less.
So the idea being the future budget this year and the future budgets may be impacted by these guardrails, and therefore that's where the saving is going to be found. Any discussion about how they are planning on doing that in any way, or is there no? Okay. We do know that they did recently impose different additional restrictions on FMS service provider, not restrictions, additional requirements on financial management services providers as far as who they need to have on staff to be able to provide some of those, payment and document reviews and all the other things that are required. And so there's an overall plan, I think, as it relates to this. General Regional Centers direct service professional workforce training and development, reduction of 17.6 general fund and 36.8 million general fund. I'm assuming some of our workforce initiatives possibly may have gotten touched. Do we know which ones? Does anyone know? That's my assumption, though.
DSPU is gone.
That's what I was thinking. If I didn't want to say it, but I was thinking
it,
DSPU
it,
might be one of those ones that's gone.
it was in something I read yesterday. It was specifically like defined.
Was the internship mentioned? DSP internships at all?
I didn't see internship and I didn't
Okay.
see tech.
So I'll get more
Just
details for
the-
folks on that. Oh, sorry, Lindsay, please. Yeah.
What I read, it was just the training initiatives, and everything that they proposed to cut hadn't been implemented yet. So I don't think they're touching the internships.
Oh, good, because you guys have already been piloting it, and so have other. Okay, cool. All right. Again, these just come out. There's going to be more information that's provided. There's going to be hearings and things where stuff comes into focus a little bit more. Ongoing savings, reduction of 10 million general fund, and ongoing reflecting historic savings at Porterville Developmental Center. Since we switched over to offering diversion on felony cases, the population at Porterville Developmental Center has dropped significantly, right, Jordan, behind the wall?
That's
there
correct.
at Porterville. And so I can just imagine that, the outside of the walls wasn't really being used, and now inside the walls, which if we can successfully serve people outside of an institutional setting that have not been deemed to be criminals, but instead require things like competency training and stuff, then I'm all for a community-based, a safe community-based approach. So implicit bias training, reduction of $5.6 million. I believe the implicit bias training is still going to be going on. It's just not going to be the curriculum refreshed, or I believe something to that effect. And then health and safety waiver assistance, reduction of 3 million general funds starting in 25-26 ongoing. With the new, since all the rates are now DES set rates, the necessity to do things like health and safety waivers is dropped significantly. And so I see that they've dropped that out of there as well. I will also note that was also an equity initiative for the department as well that they've dropped. Capital outlay, request to appropriate 2.2 million one-time general fund construction phase for the sprinklers at Porterville. When you have old institutions, you need a bit more money for that. So this is where you can get the information on the May revision. I know we spent a lot of time talking about it, but it's always a big deal. And I feel like this is a good time for me to drop that information in the chat and then call on Lindsay Dyba if I can, or anyone else that also wants to contribute. Oops. Okay, Jay first, and then, or Jay, is your hand?
Yeah. I just really wanted to say, like, that information is super important, but it's also important to look at what's being said about IHSS and the 50-hour cap on IHSS, because that will have a massive effect on SLS and also on folks in ILS that have providers that are currently supporting them.
Absolutely. There is a number of other policy areas as well, other department impacts, Department of Social Services, certainly in a number of different areas, even Department of Rehabilitation, it's all impactful. So I think we could certainly do more of a deep dive into some of those things. I say that too. CDCAN is Marty Emoto's email that he puts out. It is lengthy, but it comes out very regularly. And in it, Marty does a really good job of finding some of those other policy areas that truly are impactful on people with individuals with developmental disabilities and their support systems, their family members, service providers. So if you do get a chance, I do recommend signing up for those emails because he does an amazing job with that. Lindsay, can I throw it to you?
Yeah, if I can figure out how to unmute. Yes, and if any Capital Coalition members want to jump in for anything I missed, please do. But I've put this flyer in the chat. There is a Keep the Promise rally next Thursday, May 22nd at the Capitol from 11:30 to 1. And the rally is just about keeping the Lanterman promise, so it can address potential Medicaid cuts, the May budget revise. There will be some self-advocate speakers and I believe some legislative speakers. There'll be chanting and signs. There'll be a sign making station if you're not able to make signs ahead of time. So please, if you can, come and bring people. The Eric just put a link in the chat too to the webpage, which has like a map, which is helpful as well. So please come, bring people, spread the word. The more people there, the better.
Lindsay, where's the map?
The link that Eric just put in the chat
Okay.
is a website that the Lanterman Coalition made for the rally.
Thank you.
And then the PDF that I put in the chat is the flyer that you see on the screen right now.
I'm going to accept your cookies. All right. Yes, please, folks. I know I will certainly be out there. I believe my executive director is going to be out there. I know that they are looking for self-advocates and family members that are interested in being speakers. So please, if you are interested in that, check out the flyers that have been done. But yes, I got a message from my boss, Lori Benellis, saying if there's any way we can solicit some support to get some speakers that are clients or family members. So thank you all for all of your efforts to put on things like this. I want to acknowledge that the State Council on Developmental Disabilities did a fantastic training for regional centers as well about doing advocacy in this area. And I believe we will have a number of staff that are going to be going up there, Lindsay as well, from our regional center to support it. So. All right, Scott, I think we've got time for an HCBS update.
Fantastic. Well, HCBS is hard at work. We are now currently at 39 or 30%. We're at 169 out of 559 sites reviewed. Additionally, as many of you know, we did have our grants submitted to DDS. And we are anxiously awaiting their approval so that we can pass along that grant information. That's all I got for HCBS today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I had an opportunity to go over the HCBS grant proposals with our executive management team, and you guys are awesome. So I will want to put that out there that we really appreciate the variety of different grant projects that were proposed, and we cannot wait to see what the department is going to say about our proposed plans. So thank you all again for answering the charge of getting those done. I do want to make a reminder that we are planning on not having coffee with community services next weekend. So for the holiday weekend, we are going to not have our meeting, and then we are going to come back on the busiest day of our lives, which is going to be May 30th. And we're going to see how many more gray hairs that we have in our community services department. Between now and then, again, you that log into this meeting every week, we believe that you're in the service provider directory. We believe that you guys have, I'm sure, all done your service acknowledgement forms. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your specialists. We're really going to try to focus on this over the next couple weeks. Zach's not scheduling any more meetings for me other than anything rate related, no housing meetings, nothing. We're going to try to get as much of this taken care of over the next 2 weeks. We'll be updating folks on our progress right there at the end of May, and you'll know how we're doing. So other than that, we want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for the presentation from Expressible, and look forward to talking to folks in a couple weeks. Take care.